Well, I'm going to try to show you how to use our online exam system. So when you click on the link that I'm going to give you, you can go ahead and try out what I'm doing right here, which is this sort of training version, a little mini fake exam. And it's pretty straightforward, at least initially. You got fields to enter your name. So we can do that. And then, the format's going to look pretty much like what you'd seen in my classes before. We're going to have simple questions for, say, something like nomenclature, where you just have to enter in by typing. So in this case, we've got an ester here. What is this? 2-methyl. Helps if I could type. Butyl acetate. Like that. Yep, pretty straightforward, right? Nothing to that. We've got some multiple choice type questions here. So here we've got a question on the reactivity of substituted benzenes, just a few multiple choice questions here, which is the most reactive in any AS reaction. All right, the best activator looks like the hydroxy group here, so that would be B. And which compound is the least reactive? Well, that would be the strongest deactivator, which is A. All right, well, that's already selected. Well, you get the point. Pretty straightforward stuff. Where it gets a little more interesting is when we start looking at reactions and mechanisms, things where you have to draw a lot of structures. So this question 3 is typically what you would see for a reaction type question. Again, should look really familiar, similar to what you see in exams in normal. So here we've got an old EAS reaction from a couple of chapters ago. Here we've got a benzene reacting with sulfuric acid and nitric acid. This is going to be a nitration. So if you've ever used a drawing program like Microsoft Paint or Adobe Illustrator, things like that, this isn't going to be too unfamiliar. If you've ever used a chemical drawing program, then this is actually going to be very familiar. But regardless, over here you've got a little palette, a little box to draw in, kind of again like on my exams, and then a tool set over here. So the tools we've got a bond drawing tool here, an eraser over here, selection tool, text tool, some arrows, ring forming, etc. So I'm going to show you how to do this and a couple of different variations on how it can be done. So if I wanted to draw my answer here, like a benzene ring, I could just click and drag to make a bond. And then you see how when I hover over an atom or a bond or something like that, you get kind of a little glow effect. That's telling you that the next thing you do is going to be attached or associated with whatever is glowing. So if I want to make a carbon-carbon bond, I hover over until it glows, and then I click and drag to make my new bond. So just be aware of that. Make sure that every time you go to draw something, if you're trying to attach it to something, make sure you get that little highlight, that little glow first. Otherwise, you'll get weird detached structures. So I can go around and draw my little benzene ring, kind of like if you were drawing it on a pencil and paper. When it comes to double bonds, triple bonds, there's a couple ways you can do that. One way, as kind of a shortcut, is to simply click on an existing bond, make sure it's glowing, and it should automatically put the double bond there for you. If you click it again, it'll actually stay a double bond, but it'll kind of flush the double bond in a different direction. So here it's out, here it's kind of more out, and then it's back in the benzene ring like you would normally draw it. So you can make quick work of that, clickety, clickety, click, and there's my benzene ring. Another way to draw a double bond, if you notice some of the tools over here have a little blue triangle in the corner, that one, and that one, that one, and that one. That's because they actually have multiple tools inside of that tool. So if you click and hold, say on this bond tool, if I click and hold it, it'll come up with a sub palette of all the different kinds of bonds that you can draw. So I could actually just select the double bond, and then the next bond I draw will be a double bond until I change the tool back again. So you can do double and triple bonds that way, etc. We have an erase tool, since I don't want that to be part of my answer. I can hit the eraser and just make sure you're hovering over, get that glow effect, and then just punch it once to get rid of the first bond, and then again to get rid of the second bond. So I drew my benzene out. A couple of other tools here. We've got the selection box, so you can kind of click and drag to select something. That allows you to do all sorts of things, like move it around. So if I grab it, I can kind of move it around if I need to have some more room somewhere. You can also hit backspace, and it'll delete the whole thing, like that. So a couple of options there. We've got a chain tool here. This is just for drawing. If you click and drag, it'll just draw a whole bunch of carbons chained together really quickly. Get rid of that. Go away. We've got a text tool, which you can use to draw just normal text. If you click, you can type out whatever. And you can also type out chemical structures. and it should be intelligent enough to know where to subscript for you. Whenever you use the text tool, make sure you do click somewhere out of it because it doesn't actually preserve the information you've just typed otherwise. So, choose another tool or just click another box to start, things like that. So there I have a little ethanol molecule. And since it's selected, again, I can hit backspace if I want to get rid of it. If you are drawing your structures, you can do ring formation, since we've got a question on benzene here. This is the ring formation tool. You can, of course, just use the normal bond like I showed you before to draw out a ring structure. But this is a nice shortcut. So if I use this, it'll actually just, if I click it, it'll make a nice 3-membered ring. You can click and drag if you want, and it actually will rotate it on one of the axes. You can kind of, adjust what it looks like a little bit. You can also click on an atom like this, and it'll attach it to that atom. What else can we do? Let me erase all this stuff. Go away. We've got an arrow tool. If you're doing like reactions later on, you can do arrows. And yeah, there's lots of different kinds of arrows here. You can have curved arrows and equilibrium arrows, things like that. But let me go ahead and erase all that. A nice shortcut that I think you all should really take advantage of, since most organic reactions are really just a sort of manipulation on the original structure. You do have the option, if you look, when I hover over the original starting material, I get that little grabby hand, and that's because you can drag and drop. So that's a really quick way to go ahead and draw your products, because now all I have to do is actually do the reaction on this, which is a nitration, draw a bond sticking out, choose the text tool, make sure I hover, get that glow effect, and then just type out NO2. And then again, just make sure you click out of the text, and there's my answer. There is an undo and a redo button down here, well, buttons. So if I undo that, it'll undo my typing, it'll undo my bond forming, and it'll undo my drop. And you can redo it in case you change your mind. And that's pretty much writing out reactions. It's kind of like doing it on a pencil and paper. It's really not that much different. Let's go on to something a little bit more involved, like a mechanism. We're going to be drawing lots of structures. So here I've got something from last semester. We've got it looks like an SN1 reaction between a tertiary halide and fluoride. So again, it's very much just like doing it in a pencil and paper. Really not that much different. Again, you can use the drag and drop trick. So I can drag and drop that. It plops into the middle here. And it's already selected, so I can kind of move it over here, give myself some room. And like I said, this is an SN1. So what I'm going to do here is select my little curved arrow tool, and you can pop that open by holding it, and you can change the arrow type for radical reactions or polar reactions. It's polar by default. So now I'm just going to draw an arrow for my mechanism. And the arrow tool is a little quirky. It's kind of intelligent, but kind of weird. Basically what you want to do, if I just click and drag, I get a curved arrow. And you can adjust the curve a little bit by kind of sweeping. If I sweep upwards first, I can kind of get a broader curve, etc. If you really hold it and move it around like crazy, it does behave a little weird. So if I do this for a while, it kind of gets almost stuck in there. I kind of whip it back. So I recommend, if you're using the arrow tool like this, if you don't kind of get it right immediately, just undo it or delete the arrow and try again. So let me try to actually put it over here. Let me do some undos here. And I'll go ahead and start on this bond, and I'll just try to draw it kind of going out towards the bromine. Yeah, good enough. Like that. All right, so now that's the first step in an SN1. Let me draw a little arrow for my first step. And then for the product, conveniently, I can do a copy and paste. So copy and paste. And again, it stays selected, so you can kind of move it over like this. Saves a lot of time rather than redrawing everything from scratch. And of course, now I just need to get rid of the bromine here and put a carbocation on there. To do that, we've got a little tool over here. You can see it's got a little negative charge. This is where all your little atom modifications are. So we've got negative charge, positive charge, radical electrons, and electron pairs. So right now I need the positive charge. And if I just go click it, kind of where I want it to be, there's my carbocation. And of course, I also generate bromide here. So go and use my typing tool like that. And then that would be a bromide, so it'd be negative. Just sort of put that over near the bromine. And then really I properly should put lone pairs on my atoms. So again, I'll go back here to this little modifier tool and select my lone pair. So putting lone pairs on things takes a little bit of practice. If you just click anywhere, it'll put a lone pair kind of horizontally like that. And of course, having your lone pairs drawn horizontally is not always appropriate. So what you can do is click and drag, and it'll actually rotate as you kind of move it up and down or left and right. So you can kind of adjust the angle. Let's say I wanted one to be perfectly vertical. I could kind of just draw it like that. and then I'll just click another one. So that's one way you can do it. You can do it nearby. So let's say I wanted to put one above the bromine and below the bromine, and then I need one over here, and if I just click, it's going to make it horizontal. So I'm going to click and drag it until it's horizontal, and then do the same thing over here, kind of make it horizontal like that, or vertical like that. And that's good enough. And then, of course, I need my fluoride for this next step, so I'm going to use the text tool, type F, get out of it. And then, again, I need my charge, so I'm going to need my negative, kind of just put it somewhere over there. And then the lone pairs. Now I'm going to show you another way to do lone pairs. Rather than clicking near something, if you actually click on an atom, like a letter of an atom, and hold it, once you start moving it, it'll kind of automatically put it at a proper angle at a different distance. So here is just kind of like, putting it at a certain radius. So I'm just going to put it over here, do it again, make sure I'm clicking on the F, kind of go straight up, straight down, and now I'll go straight to the right. So another really quick way of drawing out your lone pairs on an atom like that. So yeah, this is a simple two-step mechanism, and the next step, I'm going to need my red arrow again, my curved arrows. And from here, I'm just going to start from one of my lone pairs on my nucleophile, my fluoride, and just sort of curve it down like that. There. And there's my fluoride attacking my carbocation. And then when all I got to do, let me clean these free lone pairs are up here. I need another arrow like that. And then, well, I can be really lazy and grab the product up here since I'm done. And there I go. And I could probably add the lone pairs if I really wanted to, but that's good enough. So that's how we can do a mechanism. It's the same drawing tools. It's just got that red curved arrow kind of thing. That does take a little bit of getting used to. And like I said, if you don't get the red arrow right on a couple of seconds, just delete that arrow and try again. It can get a little quirky if you hold it and drag it around forever. It starts to look like a jump rope. But that's that. And then it's really the same process if you're doing like a synthesis question. Right here, we've got this synthesis. You can drag your starting material down and position it where you need it. Draw an arrow. And I can see I'm taking an alkyne and I'm turning it from a 2-carbon alkyne into a 5-carbon chain alkyl halide. So the first step would be an alkylation. So I can just type out, what would that be? Sodium, amide, And then a second step would be, what's this be? 1, 2, 3, 3-carbon chain? Yeah, I think so. And maybe say an alkyl halide. So there's my bromopropane. And of course you could have drawn it out instead. I could have done a skeletal structure out here somewhere like that. And let me just clean it up a little bit. But that would be my alkylation in the first step. And I can go ahead and select this, copy and paste it, drag it over here, and then just change that H. If I hover over it, it'll let me change it with the text tool into my propyl group. And so now I got my 5-carbon chain. And then you can just add more steps as necessary, right? Adding another arrow and more conditions, etc. Again, it's just like doing it on paper. You just don't have a pen and pencil or whatever. You've got these drawing tools to get used to. And then when you're all done, just hit the submit button down at the very bottom. It'll ask you if you really mean to submit it. And that's that. So that's our little online testing system. It's, some of the things are very basic, just typing things into text fields and little multiple choice pop-ups, things like that. Where you're really going to want to practice, of course, is with this drawing interface, which again, I think is fairly intuitive. It doesn't take that long to get used to. Get a good feel for what all the different tools do, and get used to the drawing. Like I said, if you just approach it like you would if you were, drawing it by hand, you're good to go. So this little sort of fake mini exam, I'll have a link to this on the course webpage, so you can go ahead and get some practice utilizing, particularly, of course, these drawing tools. And then, of course, just watching this little video here should help you out as well. All right, good luck with it.